The Sharpest College Football Podcast. These are our conference title previews. This is BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Robert, I am looking forward to we're going to preview all 9 conference title games. Looking forward to it. No real duds that I can see. All seem compelling to me, yeah?
Yeah, and I think this is, although there are some disadvantages from the playoff perspective of not having divisions anymore, you now are at least ensuring that the teams playing in these conference championship games are actually good and competitive, right? I think you mentioned it in part one. Go check it out if you're watching this. We talk about the amazingness that was last week from all the games and the rivalry games. The 3.5 spread in the Big Ten championship game is the smallest it's been in years, a decade almost, right? Like some of these are going to be very competitive games, and it's going to make for a very fun Friday and Saturday. So I'm pretty excited for
Yes.
this.
Good point. Starts at 4 p.m. my time. A little early happy hour for we on the West Coast here. If you're a returning viewer or listener, thank you so much. We appreciate it. If you are new, welcome so much. We hope you enjoy it and you stay with us forever and ever. If you are new, take a screenshot of this. This is our glossary. We refer to these metrics throughout our podcast. Save the screenshot wherever you save all your college football work. Looking at our results last week, treading water, basically dual model plays. 3 and 4. My total play was a 1-0 on Texas A&M and Texas going under. 55% for the season, not bad. 17% ROI since inception, since we started tracking these almost 3 years ago. Yeah, 27 months, let's say. So not bad, not a great month. As often happens in this game, we make our hay in a few weeks, and the other ones we just try to break even and just limit the losses. So doing just one look back this week, they got us again. Gus
Yeah.
outsmarted us. Now, thank God he resigned or retired or whatever. Actually, he went to go work for Mike Norvell
Yeah.
at Florida State. You know what? This wasn't as horrible as the other ones. I just weirdly, my metrics say this should have been a 14-14 game. It's just crazy that Central Florida outgained Utah by almost, they almost doubled them up, but it was closer on a per play basis, which really is more of a determinant factor. And then they threw in 2 interceptions, which that's death in a game that's close-ish here. But the scoreboard wasn't close at all. It just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. I don't know how you give it 28 points to a pretty bad Utah offense, a very bad Utah offense. I don't know. Gus no longer Central Florida. We figured him out. So maybe Central Florida is now bettable now that GJ Kinney is the new head coach. Good hire, goodish by hire by them. They had some really weird moments this season. And good luck to you, Mike Norvell, trying to see how you can channel Gus Malzahn's yardage into points that actually work.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because after this game on Friday, I was basically gonna, I was like, okay, I'm making a note in the podcast. If UCF ever comes up again, I'm gonna say they're banned. I'm never banning them again. They're banned from this. And then Gus Malzahn just went ahead and banned himself for us. Good job. That was good. No, I have a lot of questions about why Florida State thinks that hiring Gus Malzahn as offensive coordinator is a good idea. That's people are like, oh, UCF is really good. I'm like, I don't, not really. They weren't really good last year, and they're not really good this year. They're okay this year. So that's concerning, but whatever. Yeah, this UCF team has gotten us a couple times, and I think we're now going to, because we know this exists, I think I'm now going to spend some time this offseason figuring out. We already looked a little bit. We're thinking of that on a more per play basis. It's a couple of big plays that are big drives rather that are doing it, and I think we're gonna patch this. We're gonna patch Gus Malzahn in the offseason. So stay tuned for that.
And in fairness, we did say, both of us said, okay, I'm not going against the model, but I'm playing like a half a unit.
Yeah.
So you all were warned. It's not like this came out of nowhere. I did my homework last week, and so we saw this coming, but we weren't going to try to overrule the model. All right, that's our one sharpest look back here. The metrics through week 14. Boy, one kind of overdue team jumping to the top 20 here, and one real surprise for me. No real big changes in the top, but jumping in at number 19, you have them at 53, which seems a little more reasonable to me, is Miami of Ohio. They've got a pretty good defense, and you don't like these lopsided teams as they are, so you're a little more reasonable with ranking them 53rd. And then Arizona State, who's just been on fire for quite a while. You're a little more bearish on them than I am, which is interesting because I think they're pretty well balanced. And there's a really interesting data point coming up on this team. Actually, two data points going in different directions on here. Arizona State, I definitely can buy. Miami of Ohio, not so much.
Yeah, a lot of agreement in a lot of these. You have Texas one, I have them three. Ohio State, we both again, and we said it last week with Indiana, right? Our model's kind of it's like the parent be like, oh, pat the kid after a bad day, pat them on, oh, you'll get them again, don't worry. We reward good behavior and say, oh, don't worry, you'll get them next time for underperforming, and that's how it was for Ohio State. We're like, yep, they're the second best team, and they're still the second best team. We don't care. We don't care about the fact that they did absolutely horrendous against Michigan. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. We'll find out in a few weeks when they play again. I will say I like my Notre Dame and Penn State ranking more than yours, and I like my Miami ranking more than yours as well. I think for Tulane, I'm surprised you still have Tulane that high. My ranking seems, I think, better for Tulane. I think yours is probably better for UNLV though, but I like my BYU, and I think my Arizona State might be a bit too harsh, but I like my Miami of Ohio ranking and my yeah, it's interesting though we both have Louisville basically top 12. Like we have basically Louisville
Yeah,
borderline playoff. And this is the sad part about the current construction as the playoffs as they are constructed, because you have a bunch of teams, Louisville, South Carolina, and you can expand that out further. You can include Miami into that tier. You can even maybe say that maybe not Tulane per se, but there's a lot of these Power Four teams. Colorado would be one. BYU would be one. There's all these teams that are like pretty good, but they're just not. They don't have a dominant win over a top 20 team, right? They don't play in the SEC, right? So they had a bad game here or there, but they're still a good team. And the kind of business case is the fact that all your championship games are decided this week. Okay. Next week is Army Navy, but that's one time slot. Army Navy plays at, I think, either 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I can't remember exactly. But why can't all of those teams play? Okay, yes, do they get a bye? No, but why can't all of those teams play a play-in game to the playoff next week? Why not? There's your business case right there. They're sitting around doing nothing, and half of them, Cam Ward's not playing in a bowl game, Tyler Shuck not playing in a bowl game. Like a lot of these players on these teams, they're not playing in bowl games. They're going to immediately opt out because they're going to go to the NFL. Incentivize these kids to play an actual game. Let them play in a play-in game next week, or hell, even this week, right? Maybe you don't. Maybe you can rearrange things, rejig things a little bit to get it so you actually have Like there's ways you can make this work. This is far from it. Like if a lot of these top players on these top teams are just going to opt out of a bowl game anyway, then actually give them something to play for. Let them play in to the playoff, right? Expand the playoff not just to 14 teams, expand it out to 32 teams, and then you have like expand to 32, but you have like the top 12 or something. But I'm not sure the exact number that you do it, but have the top 12, have them give them basically a bye, and then have your conference champions have a 2-round bye, but have a bunch of these teams play into that first round that happens right before Christmas. That's my take.
I'll tell you why that won't work, and that's because you're going to interfere with the Camellia Bowl, and we can't have that happen. Okay, that's that's it for Army Navy after that evening. But if you want to crap on the fine people of Alabama, wherever that bowl is, go ahead. I'll just you. I had some Canadians come after me last week, and I'm still alive. Thank you very much. But if you want to go after some people in Alabama instead of me, take your shot, buddy.
You,
Go
you
ahead.
you can give Army Navy its own time slot. Like no one's saying you play the game the same time as Army Navy. You can actually hold the other games
Okay.
until Army Navy is done. That's not a problem. No one's gonna care. But you have a bunch of these teams now that are just gonna basically completely opt out of bowl games, and you could have them play competitive games against each other and sell those for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of TV rights. So I think you should do that option, instead of the other option, which is just they opt out of a bowl game and get ready for the NFL Combine.
Or my idea of the relegation bowl, which I think would be amazing watches. All right, the top offenses. We talked quite a bit in the Week 14 review about Miami just being the best offense throughout the season. Didn't get them there against Syracuse, though. But here we go, number 20. Tulane jumps in now. Offense. We've had them jump in different spots here. Darian Mensah on the top 10 quarterbacks. We've had them in different spots of the defense, and now they're showing up in one of the top 20 offenses too. We'll talk about their title game against American title game against Army, which actually should be a really good one here. Army's dropped out of my top. Yeah, is there no Army in here anymore? Yeah, they've dropped out after that Notre Dame game. Just ditched their numbers. But interesting, Tulane just shown signs here, there, and everywhere of balance. To me, it seems like you're a little more bearish on them than I am, though.
Yeah, I don't. We like Tulane, and I think they will be a good team next year. But that loss to Memphis is pretty rough.
Yeah, yeah. All right, some of the other offensive team metrics here. Top 10 running offense. Now, here's Ohio jumping in from out of nowhere, which makes it interesting. I have Miami in my top 20 overall, and I have Ohio as the top 10 running offense. So that'll sneakily be maybe an interesting or at least competitive MAC title game. Excuse me. When we're talking about my top 10 passing explosiveness offenses here we go. Now jumping in, now that their season is over, App State at number 9. Not sure. Oh yeah, I think they did that against East Carolina. East Carolina turned it around on offense, but I don't know. App State, this is what they should have been doing all year. They had coming into the season, they had the best quarterback in the East, and in horse racing we call this a clunk up for third place, where they just a little late progress at the end of the season here. But I don't know where this came from. Should have seen this earlier from App State.
Yeah, it is weird that App State is a team you actually picked to win or make the Sun Belt, and they seemed like a good team on paper, but they had a really rough season. Now they pulled it back a bit towards the end, but still though for a while just a not a good team at all, and they finally figured it out. But yeah, good that they finally did figure that out. A bit too late though to make the championship game or the playoff, but they figured it out.
Yeah. All right, some player metrics here. A very different sentiment here. Sam Levitt of Arizona State jumps into the top 10 quarterbacks. Really nice. That's an interesting discussion when we get to our playoff preview, assuming that Arizona State wins, which who knows, because Mr. Jordan Tyson, who jumped in from out of nowhere to be number 6, helps when you're playing that horrible Arizona defense. Mr. Tyson is out for the Iowa State game. And if you look at the breakdowns, he's their entire receiving game here. So that is a really tough break for Arizona State. But it's good to see Sam Levitt. You might recall that we've had Arizona State in some defensive metrics showing up from time to time. But Jesus, this is a well-balanced team that's playing hot at the right time. That's a really tough break, though, to lose a top 10 receiver in the entire country.
It is, but that being said, though, this Arizona State team played absolutely lights out this week against Arizona. Just an absolute mauling of them, of their rivals, of a team some people thought could actually win, or well, a competitive team in the Big 12, not even just an absolute domination, as Arizona State just paved their path to the Big 12 championship game. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is about Dillingham, he finds a way to maximize whatever he has on his team, too. You might remember last year he was running swinging gates for play after play when basically they were down a lot of personnel last season. All right, 3 new names on the bum list. Jack Lausch just zero up the charts at number 1 from out of nowhere. It's probably just a matter of not having enough pass attempts. Bryce Archie weirdly jumps into the top 10 for South Florida after they just crushed somebody. I forget who they played, but I think they had like 60 points. And then Evan Simon, of Temple. Interesting that he's there after Sam Drayton got fired, but don't know if Mr. Simon will be there next year when, I don't know if you saw, Temple hired Sam Houston coach Casey Keeler as their new head coach, which is interesting, but he's a Pennsylvania guy, so I think that makes sense. But one other note, as I mentioned in the Week 14 review, Braden Shager ends the year at number 3. Congratulations. His backup just comes in and throws for a 135 apex and career start number 1. Braden Shager, you really stunk. Maybe go to an FCS school next year. I don't see it on the cards. I don't know if he's a senior, but time to move on from Hawaii.
Yeah, and one other team that underperformed for us this year, we kind of liked their over. They got 5 and 7. They couldn't get the 6. So a bit unfortunate that. But again, I think they did get a little. They had a couple of rough weeks in there. But maybe next year will be the year they finally
make
get
it if they had this. Sorry to cut you off. I think they'd make it if they had this kid playing more than the season finale, though. That's what kind of stings about that one.
I agree with you on that, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Defensive power ratings. 2 new teams that just vault way up. Michigan, not surprising. They've been good all season, but not top 20 good. And then You have that outstanding performance against Ohio State that drops them at number 12. And then Sam Houston, Casey Killer's goodbye present to them. Who'd they play? They played some. Who did Sam Houston just play this week?
Liberty.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So they jump into number 14 as well. So congratulations on that. Now find a new coach, guys. You suddenly found competence and now you're suddenly looking for a new coach. Apologies to Sam Houston. They're the Bearcats with a K, right?
Yeah,
Not Sam Houston, right?
Bearcat
Okay.
spelt wrong. Yeah.
All right. Other team defensive apex here, or metrics here. Sam Houston jumps in from off the board to number 6 in defensive apex. It's a measure of passing defense. Another place that Ohio pops up here is defensive G gap. So this is basically run defense here for Ohio. So you've got, again, little shoots of unexpected competence in the MAC title game where you've got Miami and Ohio popping up just at the end of the season here. Maybe they just needed to play more of their competition, and those sacrificial games where they're getting their faces punched in by Power 5 or Power 2, Power 4, whatever programs. I guess they just don't lend themselves to good metrics.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ohio there is pretty good. I we'll talk about them, but they're playing for the MAC championship game. They did not let us down last week against, I think it was Ball State. So that was pretty
Yeah.
good. I was pretty happy with that outcome this week when they handled business and covered the spread for us there. So yeah, I like this Ohio Bobcat team. So
Yeah. Our conference title game previews, we're going to do these in chronological order. So starting at 4 o'clock my time, happy hour starts early in Newport Beach. We have Western Kentucky at Jacksonville State. This is at Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State was undefeated until they basically threw this game. I think they probably just didn't want to show too much and were saving it for this, the real game. Don't remember where that game was last week. I think that was at Western Kentucky. Does that sound right?
wherever it was, it looked miserable, like cold and rainy. I don't know where it was actually. Let me check that. But I was actually watching this game because for the fun reason that I put a little on Jacksonville State money line last week, and because I did have Sam Houston State to win the conference. If Jacksonville State had won that game, then my Sam Houston State to win the conference would have been live. So that's why I was, shall we say, sad when Jacksonville State decide they could do nothing on offense in this game. That was very concerning. No, it was home actually. We were
No, it
at
was at
so,
Western Kentucky,
uh
according to ESPN here.
or
Look
oh
at this week's games.
wait a second. Let me check. Oh yeah, you're right. It was at Western Kentucky. Yeah, they won 19-17 because they were up 19-16 and then they kicked a field goal. But again, not a great offensive performance there by Jacksonville State. Logan Smoothers and Tyler Huff were both very poor passing. They tried to get the run game going, but they didn't do great at that either. I don't know. I think it's our models both have Jacksonville State by a bit. You have it by about 9. I have it by about 16.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly the same. Not technically a play, not a play as of through, not a play through your model, but I'm a little concerned that
Yeah.
my model really liked Jacksonville State last week and they didn't cover. Now, does that mean that, again, as you mentioned, they didn't want to give anything because they knew if they lost this game, then they'd be playing them again? So maybe they just said, all right, whatever, we're just going to let them win, basically, and then we'll play them next week at home. Also, it is a bit far. You're going a lot further north. Now you're at home in Jacksonville, Mississippi, Western Kentucky. I'm assuming there's an airport there, but probably not much of an airport. You're not landing at O'Hare or something there. Not the greatest travel to Western Kentucky. We'll see. I think Jacksonville State, I think, is the better team. They should win, but I don't think it's a play based off of our models.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the models to the fact that basically we both have Jacksonville State by 2 scores here, and I think that just in terms of just straight up, I do like Jacksonville State here. So if you're just really looking for action, maybe just a little bit on the money line on them. I just think they're just clearly a better team. I want to point out that this offensive number here for Jacksonville State's probably dragged down a little bit by that early season ineptitude under Logan Smothers, and then Tyler Huff's just completely turned them around. And this is a really good offensive rating for a Conference USA team too. So I think these teams are just in 2 different spots right here. So I do Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks. I do like them to win this one and take Conference USA. As I mentioned about 5 weeks ago, actually, I think it was after week like 7 or 8. So it would be like 7 weeks ago now. I think they were plus 230 at that time when I said to look at that play. All right. Tulane is giving for this is at Mikey Stadium, home game for Army here, as they were undefeated in conference play. You've got this interesting, very effective passing game for Army that is not really explosive, just only because they don't throw it too many times. When they do, it tends to catch teams off guard here. Really good passing game though for Tulane as well. Darian Mensah has just been awesome this season. No surprise, Army is the better running team of the two. Excuse me. Two stingy defenses though, both really good against the pass, both really good against the run as well. Tulane has definitely had the tougher schedule. Army was not nearly as successful against Notre Dame as Tulane was in their non-conference games against, I think it was Kansas State and Oklahoma, but Army did have the tougher opponent in those power conference, let's just call it, games here. I still do believe in Army's offense here. Now, they go against a really good Tulane defense here. Summerall, the head coach, is a really good former DC at Kentucky, very good defensive mind here. I've got this really close. I basically have Army by a point here. You have Army by 11, which is interesting. If you want to be strict about it, basically we both have the wrong team favored. That's not officially so. You need a bigger margin than just one in my model. But I'm just wondering if Notre Dame broke Army, because Army's offense was not awesome. Yeah, were they off last week? I might be
No,
mistaken
they
here. Sorry.
played
Oh, North
UTSA.
UTSA. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
But then
And
two weeks
they did
before they
not.
played North Texas too, though. So before Notre Dame.
Yeah, yep. So maybe just people are catching on to how to defend them. I don't know. Bryson Daly, I don't know if he's been hurt. Interesting spot that Army would usually get this week off in preparation for Navy too. Something to keep in mind. That's going to be totally new territory for Army, and that they've been an independent forever. Really, a lot of cross currents here. I think I like Army, although boy, Tulane's been so good. I've been high on both these teams too. So definitely not playing this one at all. It's not a dual model play. I guess I'll start with you on this. Is you know, do you think your model's a little too bullish on Army here?
Maybe the thing is that I do. I worry a little bit about Army. I think they were really good. I think there's a lot of they were really good, and then they started breaking down after the quarterback injury. They've not been the same since then. However, if you look at last week, Tulane was playing Memphis. That game was actually on at the same time as an NFL game. This was when a lot of Americans were. I'm not sure. I don't know when you actually eat Thanksgiving. Do you do it in the afternoon or do you do it at night? I'm not sure. We
I
Canadians, we
did
eat
it.
it. Yeah, we eat at
Yes, please
night.
go ahead. 3 p.m. in my mom's household.
Really, we
Um,
never eat it more. We never eat earlier
yeah,
than 5 or 6. And I assume that's
yeah.
standard
I
in
don't know.
Canada.
It's
Okay.
just I don't know. My family might just be weird, as evidenced throughout this podcast.
Does your family like eat on Eastern time?
No, we just eat barefoot though. Oddly, I'm joking. No, I just made that
Okay.
up. It's just one of those things that we've done. It's just we
Yeah.
just go between lunch and dinner and just say three o'clock. Going to eat a lot
Okay.
and just call it a day.
That is true. It's always hard with do you eat a lunch? If you go 5 or 6, do you
Yeah.
eat a lunch? Then we have to plan a lunch where it's here's a small little some cookies or something. Anyway, okay. People were eating turkey at the time or digesting turkey at the time of this game, so maybe not everybody followed it. But if you look at the box score of Tulane Memphis, Memphis didn't beat Army through the air. Seth Hennigan only threw for 218 yards. They won through the ground.
Memphis played Tulane.
Memphis played Tulane. Yeah, Memphis did not win through the air. Memphis won through the ground. They absolutely ran all over Tulane. And wow, it's not like Tulane plays another good rushing team again this week. So this is the thing, and I think that's what my model is sniffing out. I think that's what your model is sniffing out too. And because the defensive G gap for Tulane looks a bit it's higher than Army's, but it looks a bit. Mine is adjusted, I think, more per. So maybe it might be like I think mine saw its performance against Memphis and then said, yeah, okay, their G gap is they're not actually that good. Maybe more recently they've lost some pieces or something. I don't know. But my model is probably saying, hey, they couldn't defend against Memphis. Army's a much better running team than Memphis. This could be bad, right? That's what I'm thinking. So I don't actually necessarily hate an Army play. I think if you are doing a play on Friday night, I think Army is going to be on my card there.
Yeah, the one thing I would push back a little on is Army's running, and I'm not an X's and O's guys, but if it's evident to me, it's pretty obvious. Army's running scheme is very different from most teams. And sometimes I don't even know if it's like a matter of they're better, if it's just different, which just means that it could be just more of a matchup thing than just who's a better run defense, if that makes sense. If you need to be strong at a certain position on defense here and you got it rather than just being stout all the way across the line. I don't know, but it's hit and miss sometimes with these service academies in terms of who's able to stop them and who can't, as much as anything. It gets really specific as much as anything, and it's hard to guess both ways when it will work and when it won't. I'm trying to think. Summerall has not really faced those teams before because he really wouldn't have at Kentucky. Like they weren't in conference. Is it Kentucky and Troy? They don't have any of those teams. Probably a little bit new thing for him in terms of diagnosing how to stop that run. End up at that same conclusion that you come to in terms of just Army's ability to run the ball, and they have for the most part until even against North Texas when they didn't have a lot of points. For the most part, they were able to run the ball, and they just wound up doing stupid things at the end of drives more often than not. All right, the last game on
You skipped one, yeah.
on Friday. Yep, there we go. The important one. We had Boise giving 4. This is a really good game. We just skipping ahead a little bit. We've both got this close. I have V by 1. You have Boise by 2. It's at Boise. Interesting in that you do not adjust for venue. I do. So if this is a neutral field, this would be a lot closer to about a touchdown or so in favor of UNLV by my model here. I've been saying this all season until I just basically saved it for this episode. The weak link on the field for this entire game is this Boise defense. They stink. They stink. They stink. They stink. They're not a good defense. I will remind you a couple weeks ago that they were getting moved upon by a horrible Wyoming passing offense. Horrible. And I think they only stopped that because the good Wyoming quarterback was out with a concussion and missed the second half. Clearly, Boise is a good running team with Genty, but you know what? UNLV is not that far behind. You've got that great scheme, the go offense of Brendan Marion here. UNLV has a better passing offense too. Boise a bit more explosive in the passing game, but you know what? They give up it's a problem on defense here. This is a big problem against a good quarterback, and I think you're going to get more explosive passing plays from UNLV than Boise. Both these numbers are good against the run, but Boise is this feast or famine where they have they take a lot of chances on defense, and so there's a lot of sacks in here that's dragging this number down artificially, and it's the reason that you have this number that's so high because they're a high risk, high reward defense, and it burns them a lot. The margin's not clear enough here, and then your model actually has Boise. I just like UNLV in the spot, not enough to bet it. I'm not going to go into the models here, but I did mention when I did the Week 14 review. When we did, you were also there. Thank you, Robert, for joining me. I did mention that UNLV is one of the 3 conference champion bets that I'm alive to. I fully hedged the other 2, but I'm probably going to let this one just play out just because I do like UNLV here. And I don't like, with Boise as the favorite here, how much I'd have to hedge on a team that I think is not going to win and I think is susceptible on defense.
I don't hate that. I like UNLV here. Boise has had a couple of close calls the last couple of weeks. You look at close calls against Oregon, somewhat close call against Oregon State. Close call against who
Wyoming.
was it? Wyoming. I was about to say I was like, was it Wyoming? But I'm like, no, it couldn't have been Wyoming. But it was somehow Wyoming. This team has, but the problem is, and it's funny because the team is just keep moving on up the rankings because they have to. But they do not deserve to be that high. I think neither you nor I think have them in our top 20. We don't,
No.
right? We don't,
Nope.
right? But I think you have
Not Florida or
UNLV.
Georgia.
No, right? Neither Boise nor Georgia, right? And I think that is concerning. I think that the reason Boise is this high is because this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like the snake eating itself. We can't rank the top group of 5 team like 20th. We have to rank them somewhat high. And Boise State, they beat Oklahoma a couple of years ago in the Fiesta Bowl, and they have a Heisman candidate running back. Okay, you know what? We're going to rank them close to the top. We're going to rank them at like 12th. because they almost beat Oregon, even though Oregon vastly improved from those first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll rank them, but then all of a sudden it's, oh, they don't look good, but all the teams ahead of them keep losing. They keep winning, but all the teams ahead of them keep losing. So I guess we're just gonna have to bump them up a point. We have to bump them up, and all of a sudden they're like the 10th ranked team. And the best part is they're ahead of the Big 12 champion. And it's so funny because that's like the definition of a bubble. It's like a stock market bubble. It's like that's not real. The second you have a Big 12 champion, they're gonna vault over them. You know that's gonna happen. But this is the thing, right? They keep playing with Boise. We talk about Miami. Miami have been playing with fire all season. They gotten burned against Georgia Tech. Thought maybe that was it. Then they got burned again. This Boise State team has also been playing with fire a lot down the stretch here. And
Hmm.
is it possible
Yep.
that UNLV could be the team that kind of shut them down? It's interesting because the books have like Army at like 19 to 1 to get to make the college football playoff, which is interesting because I just assumed that the winner of this game, like the winner of this game, would go. This is a play-in game for the playoff because I guess unless I don't know how you would view it any other way, right? It's got to be the winner of this game goes to the playoff, right? Because there's no way Army could vault over the. If UNLV wins this game, if Boise wins, obviously they're in. If UNLV beats Boise, I don't see how you could vault them over. And then if Army, I don't see how Army could vault over UNLV if they beat Boise, right? So I'm confused by that. But the other thing that I think is going to be funny is that if UNLV does win this game, watch. Right now they've been accommodating to Boise, having them sniffing around the top 12, like 10th, 12th, whatever. If UNLV wins this game, watch, they're going to rank them behind all that bundle group of SEC teams. And they're just going to be like, see, this is what you made us do. We would have put the SEC teams in, but you made us put a group of 5 team in, and there you go.
Yeah, I one thing I want to point out is that UNLV actually should have beaten Boise when they played. They just had some dumb stuff happen in that game, but it seemed to me that UNLV really should have won that game the first time these teams played. The other thing, when you say that you're confused about how they would handle that, is why you're not the president of the Sugar Bowl, and
Yeah,
we'll
it's
move on from there.
above my pay grade.
Exactly. All right, Saturday we go to Ohio against Miami of Ohio. This is, I think, at Ford Field, neutral site, which is interesting. Like I said, we had Miami jumping in to my top 20 teams. It's mostly on the strength of their defense here. Really strangely competent numbers here. Not often that you see a MAC game, even a title game, where all four units, both offenses and defenses, are above FBS average here. So interesting that it actually worked out right in the MAC this season, in a season that's pretty competitive at the top there. Miami is the better passing team. Brett Gabbert did come through, which is why I liked Miami to make the conference title game this season. Ohio, as I said a few slides ago, the better running team here, actually top 10 in the nation. Miami, the more explosive passing game here. Miami, a really stingy pass defense here, and you've got two good run defenses here. God, I talked through this, and it just sounds like an underplay. Although I have it going over, so forget that. You've actually got it going under a little bit here. Strange competence all around, but if you look, the defenses are better than the offenses here. So this should be, if it was just outside, would be the only thing that you would want to be different for a classic MAC conference title game. Just two teams in an outside rock fight. We've actually got different teams here. I've got, my model has Miami, your model has Ohio. I'm glad that we don't agree because this is a evenly matched title game. I think the line of less than a field goal pretty much makes sense to me.
Yeah, this is so I a couple of pieces of full disclosure here. So one, I have put a small bet on Ohio to win. It's even money. I put a bet on Ohio. Should I have? Yeah, whatever. But it's called gambling for a reason. It's like a $20 bet. But I will say that I'm like 0 and 4 in the last four MAC champion conference championship games. I have had I don't think I've picked a single winner in this conference championship game. Now, it's funny because I've had like really good success with other ones, but like the MAC has been just dead. Every time I'm like this team should win, they lose. Maybe take that as a sign to bet on me or bet on regression to the mean in this Midwestern Athletic Conference. But take your pick. You either think I'm gonna go 0 for 5, or you're gonna go with me on this one. So we'll see. Mean regression.
Yeah. We had Northern Illinois just screwing up both our models for a while there too.
Yeah.
All right, Iowa State against Arizona State. I'm wondering if this line has moved since they announced. I don't think so. I
I
hadn't
don't
seen
think
it
so.
move
I'll
since
check
they
it.
announced that Jordan Tyson was out because I think that I checked this after that. Where
It's
is this game?
minus 2. This is going to be in Jerry World in
Jerry World. Okay,
Texas. Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. Roughly in the middle of that conference.
Dallas.
I
Yeah,
guess if you're going to be the middle, yeah, that would be once you can include Central Florida.
to West Virginia.
Yeah, and Central Florida. We talked about Sam Levitt, a top 10 quarterback now by my metric here. Arizona State, the better run offense of the two. Again, really weird. Iowa State with the more explosive passing game. Not something that you really think about when you see, Boy Scout Matt Campbell on the sidelines here. But you know what? It's working for them. Two good pass defenses. Iowa State, I'd say elite. Arizona State has been in this kind of territory most of the season in terms of really good run defenses here. I want to point out that's where Iowa State has had their problems lately is this run defense here. They were okay until they had that slide where they started to just give up a ton of points. And that does not bode well for a team when you're facing a team that runs the ball pretty well here, like Arizona State. Surprisingly, the best unit on the field here is Arizona State's defense. I've got the Devils by 5. You've got them by 13. Your model is all about Kenny Dillingham. I've hedged out in this one, so I have no real stake in this. I did the full hedge just because I wouldn't want it to rest on basically a dog that's been struggling on the stretch defensively when that is the Iowa State identity as much as anything. So with Sam Levitt in the top 10, that becomes really tricky. But like we said, Jordan Tyson's out. So who knows? I'm happy to just have locked this up with the full hedge and just watch this one for fun.
Yeah, this one is fun for me. I had the preseason future on Iowa State, and then I also had a mid-season. I was like, you know what? Just $10. Arizona State to win. I'm like, yeah, they've been doing pretty good. $10. I'd forgotten what odds I had gotten Arizona State at. It was 80 to 1.
Oh my God.
Yeah, cause I was like, oh yeah, I have Arizona State to win. I like basically on Saturday, I was like, oh yeah, if Arizona State wins and then BYU wins, then Iowa State goes in and then I'm good. I have both sides of it. Then I was looking through my bets. I'm like, what odds did I get Arizona State? I'm like, oh my, and I'm like, oh okay, okay. But the thing is, it didn't matter because they were in. Like by them beating Arizona, so it didn't even. I was, oh okay, Houston, if you want to win, that's okay, it's fine, go ahead. It's not. I obviously wanted. I didn't want to play Colorado. I'd rather play Iowa State. But this is now both sides. So either way, I just get to sit back and watch this game. I'm either going to win. I'm going to win a couple $100 either way. I could potentially even hedge too. If Arizona State scores early and I get like a 3 to 1, then okay. There's a lot of potential options I have here. So this one is going to be. This could be an interesting. I'm probably just going to sit back and enjoy this. This is going to be noon Eastern. I'm going to get some lunch, some popcorn, some chips, something like that. Just sit back, have a nice snack. Just sit back and watch this on a nice big screen TV and just enjoy a nice Saturday.
I would just think if you've got that much on the upside on the favorite, I'd be tempted just to do a pretty decent sized hedge and a money line on Iowa State just to lock up a good chunk of that.
True. I do
But
have. I
it's your
remember. I
money.
do have. No, to be fair, I do have. I have Iowa State future too, right? But I get it's not equal. I could make it. I could probably get it
Yeah.
closer to equal.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. And again, if basically you have to do that on the dog, that's a great position to be in. The other thing is, on behalf of everybody that's listening and watching, thanks for telling us when you placed that bet, you jerk.
I think I did. I think I did
Did
at some
you?
point. I think I some
In fairness, I
podcasts.
listen to about half the stuff that you say, so maybe it's on me.
Yeah,
You blame it on the Japan episode. I didn't hear half the stuff that you were saying when I was in Japan. So,
it was probably around
um,
that time. Weirdly, it was probably around that time. I didn't even.
the
I
price.
didn't even. Yeah, I was just like, ah, you know what? Arizona State, they're looking pretty good. This Big 12 is wide open. Maybe they could win. And then now it's, oh, okay.
Yeah. Congratulations on that. I hope that you're able to lock up something on that, so you don't have any regret on Sunday afternoon, especially with your chips and popcorn.
This
So
is even the first time I've had that on the Big 12. I think I had Kansas State a couple of years ago against TCU. And I think I had a couple of times I
yeah,
had,
I think we both had them. Yeah.
yeah, it's weird. For some reason, I have like really good luck at figuring like betting on Big 12 championship futures. I don't know. Like, it doesn't really apply to other conferences, but I think it's a combination of like of a conference that's mostly flat, except for the years that Texas was good, but Texas isn't a thing anymore in the Big 12. And yeah, so we do really well in that conference. So yeah,
The other thing that was weird is that's when Will Howard was good. We'll just leave it
That's
at that.
true. Yeah.
All right. All right. Speaking of overrated quarterbacks, Georgia against Texas. I skewered Georgia when in the week 14 review, and I've just made the case again and again against the Georgia team. They're not bad, but they're not nearly as good as everybody gives them credit for. People just look at the headlines and they don't really look at the footnotes, if you will. It's two different teams in terms of the Georgia that's sold to us and the Georgia that we see on the field. We have a better passing game in Texas. Now, here's what's tricky is, and I haven't updated this since. I think Ewers had an awesome game against A&M. I was just pre-injury. Quinn Ewers' apex was about 131, if I remember, and post it was like 82. Just want to look here real quick and just see if what kind of performance he had last week. I apologize for not being prepared. Let me see. 7.8 per attempt. And okay, so he probably brought that up. So maybe he's a closer to 90 post injury against a pretty good A&M pass defense, too. But I don't know. I'd probably call the quarterback in here a draw. But even if we do, we've got basically the same level of passing explosiveness. Texas is a much, much better running team, which is concerning if you're Georgia because Texas basically is down to like their fifth or sixth running back. It's like everybody who like runs the ball gets hurt, oddly enough. But then in Georgia, you've got that problem with Etienne. Doesn't I don't know if you still have the fumbling problems, but you just got problems even holding onto the ball, let alone running it. You've got Texas, the premier pass defense in all of college football, against a Georgia pass defense, which is just basically average. As we saw against a poor passing Georgia Tech team, was able to really move the ball against them in the air consistently. Texas, an elite run defense. Georgia, merely good. This is all borne out here when you're looking at basically the predictives here. By far the best unit on the team or on the field is Texas. This is, I think, the best unit in the entire country. I think they're better than Miami's offense, which is an interesting thing to remember when we get to the playoff. So I have Texas by 13. You have them by 8. I'm not going to go against the double model here, but Jesus, I'm really tempted. I'll put it this way: I wouldn't be surprised if I wake up Saturday morning to see that I've bet about a half a unit on Texas here. I just don't see this as close, and I think aside from basically everything I've talked to, I think that probably the way that Georgia manhandled Texas in Austin is getting a little too much credit here, and I might be totally wrong, but I really like Texas in this spot.
This one I'm going back and forth about a lot. I The thing is, our model, as evident last week, is very good at figuring out when Texas is better than its opponent, and also kind of really bad at figuring out when Texas is it's good at figuring out when Texas is better, and it's good at figuring out when Texas is worse. Because we also were, I think Georgia wasn't a combined model play, but we were not on Texas that week. But we've pretty much been on Texas pretty much every other week since then, with a couple of exceptions, I think. And we've been bang on with the under in totals and stuff. So that's one hand. The other hand is that 17 points against Texas A&M. That was not particularly great. And the thing is, it was very clear Quinn Ewers is playing hurt because they literally, as you got closer to the goal line and they needed more mobility, they needed the ability for someone to run it in, they brought in Archie Manning for the running package. I guess Ewers has to start in this game, but if they're struggling, you could see Archie Manning in this game, right? And you even saw Archie Manning a bit in that game against Georgia earlier this year. So
Yeah, I was going to say it didn't go well for him last time.
yeah, there's a couple of things on that which are a little concerning if you're supporting Texas in this game. Conversely, Georgia did not look good against Georgia Tech. They could have very easily lost that game in many ways. They could have easily lost that game in regulation, let alone in overtime. They could have lost it many times in overtime as well. They could not stop Georgia Tech's running game. They could not stop Georgia Tech's passing game. So Georgia has clearly regressed since we saw them beat up Texas earlier this year, and they lost to Ole Miss, and then they did beat up Georgia, which like they beat up Tennessee, which now seems like the outlier game. It's like, okay, they beat up Tennessee, but then they sucked everything else. So why were they so able to beat up Tennessee so well, right? So I'm really concerned about this. Here's the thing: if you told me Georgia won the SEC, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I could see that. But if you told me, yeah, Texas dominated, won by 14, I'd be like, yeah, I could see that too, right? Or won by a touchdown or something. I don't know. I think I trust the Texas defense slightly more, which to be fair, that's exactly what your numbers say. and then my numbers do as well to some extent. I just don't know if I trust this Texas offense. But at that point, like the Georgia defense is not the Georgia defense of old. I don't know. A part of me thinks that Texas should win this game, and then that's that. But if you told me Georgia won, I wouldn't be that surprised. The other piece to this is that again, if Georgia loses this game, they have 3 losses, the same amount of losses as Alabama, the same amount of losses as Ole Miss, two teams that both beat them. But the thing is, like again, Texas, even in terms of this season, right? Texas has far from been a dominant team. Their best win is Oklahoma? Question mark. But Florida,
Texas.
no, Florida. It's Texas A&M and Florida. That's their best wins. It's Texas A&M and Florida. And okay, Texas A&M is an unranked team now, and Florida is a team that beat Ole Miss. But that's not great for your best wins. If you're sitting here being like, those are our best wins,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
concerning. A part of me I think the winner, this is probably the best team in these are the probably 2 best teams in the SEC. But honestly, I'd probably take Ohio State over both of these. I think Penn State would only be a small dog, and I think Indiana would probably only be a small dog against any of these teams either. I don't think necessarily they're that much better than, say, Indiana or Penn State, and definitely not as good as Oregon or Ohio State, right? I don't. I think the SEC just in general is down, and I think that if you try to say, oh, it should be Alabama or Ole Miss or something, like, I think a lot of these teams are pretty interchangeable. I think Texas is probably the best, but I don't think they're that good. So if you told me Georgia won this game, I would be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But if you also told me Texas dominated, I'd be like, yeah, that makes more sense too. So honestly, I don't know what I want to touch. I don't know what I want to do in this game. A part of me says Texas because our model has been pretty spot on for Texas. And I feel like this is basically a dual model. Oh, no, it's not technically a dual model play. We need it to be up to 10 for it to be a dual model
Yeah.
play, which I don't have it to 10. You have it to 10. I don't know. I think Texas wins this game. I think they cover. A 2.5 is a lot easier than the 5.5 it was last week. But this one's kind of iffy for me. A part of me wants to stay home and just watch this game and see it unfold and then see whatever chaos the committee tries to do to shoehorn an extra SEC team in. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time in Matt Carson Beck. He just almost looks sad now, or distraught, or just something like that. This is such a bear of a pass defense here. I can't see him getting right in this game. He's just been sulking against worse defenses throughout the year. Texas is has been. I think I've had them number one every week except for maybe one week that Ohio State nosed them out on defense. But I just I it just I think I maybe I don't know. I like I'm probably biased in just how good the Texas defense is, and they just maybe skew me too much. But yeah, we'll see. Don't have to bet it. I don't know. At this point, we should be very leery of betting it. We've got earned capital, and I don't want to screw around and pee it away on something stupid. Which takes us to something which is not screwing around. This is the only dual model play that we have this week. Marshall at Louisiana. Louisiana been really secretly stellar. Did they finish 11-1, or I think they lost some dumb game towards the end here. Let me. I apologize again for not being prepared on this. Let me check this. 10-2. So their only loss had been to Tulane, so they lost another game here along the way, and that was to South Alabama at home. Shame on you, up and down South Alabama, but not the worst loss in the world. But you've got what has been Ben Wooldridge has been in the top 10 of our quarterbacks for a big chunk of the season here. Now you've got that new kid. It's alliterative. His first and last name both start with a B. One of them's Braylon or Braxton or something like that, and he can run and pass. So you've probably got I think your current Marshall team is a better passing than this 87 Apex, but I still don't think they're as good as Louisiana's passing game. Both teams run the ball well. You've got a more explosive passive offense with Louisiana, although this is probably a lot better now than the season's worth on the Marshall side. But Louisiana's got a good defense too. I've got a lot of reasons to bet Louisiana, given only 3.5. And by far the best unit on the field here is Louisiana's offense. There's a weak link on here. It's the Marshall defense. I've got Louisiana by 13. You've got the Cajuns by 17. This is a dual model play, and I've already grabbed this one. I think it's up to 5.5 today from what I saw, but that's still a dual model play.
It is, yeah, and I bet this one already. I do like this one. Louisiana has been really good to us, so I think we're going to keep that going. And we have a very similar score line here, so I do like that. And yeah, love this team. Think they're a really strong team. So yeah, we'll keep on with them. Yeah.
All right, the ACC title game. SMU, they made it. Yay, good for you. This was a definitely coming into the season. I actually had them rated as the best team coming in, and it was really one of those, like I like to say, hold your breath and see if this airplane really flies moment. And they came through undefeated in conference play. Only loss was at home to BYU, which is does not look too bad now. Let's not forget that SMU started the season splitting time at quarterback, and once they settled on Kevin Jennings, who I will remind everybody, I do believe took them to victory in the American Conference game when Preston Stone was out at the end of last season. They settled on him, and that's when they really became a different team. Better passing offense here. Clemson with the better running game. Phil Moffitt had a really good season. SMU extremely explosive offense in the passing game. Clemson also, but just not quite as much as SMU. Surprisingly, you've got Clemson just a little bit better in the passing defense, but SMU is still very good. And you've got SMU is by far the better rushing defense of these two here. The thing that really will surprise a lot of people here is SMU, not just that SMU is just the better defense, but by a wide margin. This is a huge margin, 1.8 versus 7.3 offensive or defensive power rating. SMU better on both sides of the ball. So I've got SMU by 9. You have them by 8. Not quite enough to be a dual model play. I It seems like this number is not going to move enough for it to be a dual model play. Since you've got an 8, it basically needs to move to SMU -1. Maybe it can by game day. I guess this is the one I should keep my eye on. But I do like the Mustangs here.
Yeah, the thing is, for both of us, we don't really need to bet SMU -2.5, right? Because we both have SMU
True.
futures, right? Yeah, just sit back and relax and enjoy. That's it. That's all we need to do. I think SMU is the better team here. Clemson did lose to South Carolina. It was a close game. It wasn't a blowout in any by any stretch. But it was a competitive game, but it was close. But again, I don't think Clemson is the next best team. They've been shaky. They lost to Clemson, almost lost to Pitt. We should have lost to Pitt.
Are you saying Narduzzi screwed something up at the end of a game?
I know, crazy.
Make
Um,
check your notes, sir.
no, we both have them by. I have them by 8. You have them by 9. We have SMU as a clear favorite here. I'm personally probably not gonna bet on this game. If I did, it'd be to hedge on SMU. But like for our viewers, I don't. If I didn't have that bet, I would be very tempted for a SMU -2.5 or an SMU money line bet. But again, we have that, and I think some of our viewers followed us. I think we had SMU at what 20-1, something like that. That sounds about right.
12 by the time I got to Las Vegas.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, it's something. It's definitely a bit for them to win the thing. Yeah, no, I think I prefer that, and I think it's we have SMU, so we're good, so we don't need to worry about it. So I'm pretty happy with that outcome here. I think if there's anything I'm doing, I'm probably hedging on Clemson. Yeah.
I agree, although I agree on the hedge. I've actually hedged on Clemson just to wrap up something here. But I will say it's tough where if basically knowing what I know now, if this is basically a pick game, I think there's addition. It's hard to pass on additional value that both of our models say is a play. It's different unit sizing too, very materially between my preseason and my in-season plays as well. So that's an interesting discussion. Not sure if I'll be forced to make that decision. I just it seems like the market finally gets what SMU and Clemson are to a degree here. I just that 2.5 is a purposeful number. I think it's just going to be stuck between 3 and 2 all until it kicks. That brings us to the big one, Penn State against Oregon. Nobody saw this one coming just a week ago or even 3 days ago. This is an interesting matchup here. Not surprising that our models are on different sides because I've just had Penn State higher. You've had Oregon number 1 basically for about the last 6 or 7 weeks. And I've had them stuck between like number 10 and number 7. And again, their offense has actually come to life in the last month or so. Their defense is good, but not top 20 in my book. This is basically as good as it gets. What's interesting too, you look at these numbers versus that Georgia, Texas. These teams are both much more complete and just more high caliber when you're basically taking the total of what both teams bring to the table here. Drew Aller with the apex between the two. You've actually got, this is interesting. I would not have guessed this. Penn State with a higher GGAB than Oregon, which is interesting. Really close in the passing explosiveness. This is as close as it gets. Oregon with a good pass, really good pass defense, and Penn State is right there. Penn State, Oregon with a good run defense, but Penn State with an elite run defense here. I look at everything that's above here, and I don't know if I've got the right team here. I feel like Oregon's been playing possum in the second half of a lot of games. It would be fascinating if I had the data, if I could just do power ratings of first half Oregon and second half Oregon. I think they'd be totally different. I think it's a one score game. I don't know if my model's got the right team, but I like my model a one score more than I like your model having it by the very, very common football score of 29-19.
Very common. See that all the time.
So what do
Yeah,
we got on this one?
it's I do Oregon here. I mean, I have Oregon is basically, as far as I'm concerned, the only one of basically the only locks to make the playoffs. At least it should be. It's an undefeated team. They lose the conference championship game. They're still a one-loss team with wins against Ohio State, with a win against Ohio State and the couple other ones in there as well. They're in the playoff. Penn State, they'd be a two-loss team if they lose this game, but they probably still have a better resume than a lot of other teams as well, but a bit weaker. But that's beside the point. Oregon will play. This is not their final game of the season. They will play, and this feels a lot better than last year. Oregon going into the conference championship game when it was basically winner, and people thought they were going to win, and then they didn't. Bit of a difference there. I think I do Oregon. I think my model does like them. This is a competitive Big Ten championship game, and I'm actually really looking forward to this game. I think this game is going to be really good. I think this is going to be a really good. This game would have also been good as Ohio State, Oregon as well. I think the winner of this team is deservedly the number one seed. I think they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is no real there's no real debate about that. In my opinion, they are the winner of this game is the number one seed. Whether or not if it's Penn State, I feel like Penn State shouldn't be that high. Just a gut feeling of that. I don't think Penn State is the best team in the country. I could be wrong. I could be wrong on that, right? I do Oregon here. 3.5 is a bit of a big number, but this is a pretty good team. Now there is travel in here too, right? Oregon is traveling all the way
Yeah.
to Indiana. Penn State is just driving across. Okay, no, sorry, not driving. They'd be driving across the entire state of Ohio, so they're gonna catch a flight. But it's a lot closer. For Oregon has to come over a couple time zones, and they haven't been the greatest when coming over to the East Coast. That Michigan game, they were okay in the Michigan game, not bad, but it's been rough seeing some of these teams coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, right? And it's not full East Coast. It is no, actually, okay, most of Indiana is Eastern time, with the exception of the random bits that stop Indiana from being called at 7 o'clock on election nights. But whatever, that's a different rant. But no, I think it is a good. This is going to be a very good game. I can see Oregon winning. I can see Oregon covering the spread. James Franklin, this is the biggest game of his career. He's had a couple of big games against Michigan and Ohio State, but now this is it now. This is now you lost to Ohio State. You thought, all right, well, we'll see you in the playoffs. Now, guess what? They went down, so now you get this other chance here. So I think this is the biggest game of his career, but he hasn't had necessarily the best record in big games or bowl games for that matter. I've taken Oregon here. I feel somewhat comfortable in it, but we'll have to see what happens on Saturday night.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think probably the last big game that he won would have been the Big Ten title game when they played. I don't even remember who they played against. Whatever kind of sacrificial lamb was dragged up from. Actually, it was a close game, but I forget who they played, but when they played USC in the Rose Bowl in the 2016 season, and USC won 49-42. Penn State won. That's probably the biggest game that he's won, probably ever. Earlier in that season was when they beat Ohio State on a blocked field goal and stupid stuff. Here's why I bring that up. I think that Kotelnicki is by far the best offensive coordinator they've had. since Joe Moorhead was the offensive coordinator from that team. He shuttled through a whole series of hires that looked good at the time and just really didn't make sense. And I think, I don't know, it might be like maybe he figured out that he needs to be more hands off with the offense, or he found somebody that understands how to work within whatever James Franklin demands and still be competent. But these are by far the best numbers that I've seen out of a Penn State offense since then. The 146 apex, I think, was actually higher than what I totally forgot his name. Who was the kid that was like 5 feet 10, their quarterback? He wore the headband. Come on. He played
Oh,
McSomething.
Sean Clifford.
McSorley.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Sean Clifford.
Oh, back in
McSorley,
16.
McSorley.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that you've got Aller was a better apex than even McSorley had that season, which was the best by far of the Franklin era. I think people are sleeping on how good this Penn State offense is. Now, what throws everybody off the scent here and really just makes it a prove it situation is what happened this year. Again, he went to the whole old James Franklin thing against Ohio State, and it's, yep, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And this is a prove it thing. To that standpoint, maybe just for fun, I make a 0 point, like a 2% of a unit play here, just money line on Penn State, just for fun, just to prove a point, just to say maybe there's value in Penn State money line here, depending on what it is. Is this still 3.5? It seems like there hasn't been a lot
It's
of movement
still
in any of these except for Louisiana. That's the one that's
no.
moved. But,
It
sorry,
is
go
still
ahead.
three. Yeah, it is still 3.5. It is still 3.5.
Okay, and I'm just wondering which way this one will even move. It seems like we're just like we talked about earlier. There's so many of these are competitive. What's the biggest line in any of these? Who's the biggest favorite?
It might be Louisiana. Or no, Tulane's -6. And then the next up is Louisiana.
That's crazy. Wow, nobody's even a touchdown favorite. Man, that's crazy. So I think that the markets really gets what these teams are, and it doesn't surprise me we only have one play. Um, I bring that up because I'm just wondering. I don't know how much this line's going to move, and even if it does, which direction? Because I don't know. These are both sharp teams, right? It's not. Can't look at them and say, "Oh, this one's fool's gold." Maybe a little bit on Penn State just because of the James Franklin factor, but every argument that you make there, I can point to all this up here and say this is very different from what I've seen in basically since that James Franklin Rose Bowl team. So this will be interesting. I might just get itchy fingers. We'll see if I just make that really tiny partial unit play, money line Penn State, which is what I might do. But again, this is one of those things. Your model and my model have Oregon in just in different places. And I think that's why we have these different results here. But this is the one to watch, as far as I'm concerned. This is going to be the coolest game. And this is an island game, too. I don't think there's anything going against it in that late time slot, right? Does that sound right?
No, there's nothing.
Yeah, because this is, yeah. So that'll be perfect. Yeah, looking forward to that. This is going to be an awesome Friday and Saturday. No total plays this week. Market's onto it finally. Had 14 data points for every team. Congratulations, Market. You finally got it right. Just looking back on the preseason predictions, since we are here. Now, you did miss the American preview, so you're starting out a little bit of a handicap here, but I count up. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Did I get that right? 4, 6. I have 10 totals that I picked right going into 10 teams making the conference title game. You've got 3, 7, and then I don't know. I like our guests, but they didn't come through for us. They only had 4. Everybody whiffed on the Sun Belt. We all thought Texas State was an absolute certainty thing. We had either steadily on App State or you going out with a bold pick, which doesn't look too bad on JMU. Nobody was going to take Marshall. Thank you very much. Yeah, but this is interesting. So I take this title and whatever that's worth. I don't know. You can send me a Canadian dollar. See how much I can get for a Canadian dollar here. But interesting. The only one that really stymied us was the Sun Belt.
Yeah, I had. Here's the thing. Overall, though, this is pretty good. This is far from bad. This is a pretty good track record here. I think it's interesting that our guest picked Ohio State. Or else you and I both picked USC. But we were, because again, it's a pick of USC, but then a pick against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Got that one wrong, but that's interesting to note as well. Mac, we all liked Western Michigan. That one didn't pan out. Bowling Green, again, the same thing. But had they won, they would have been in there again instead of Miami of Ohio. Interesting, we both said Boise State, UNLV. That one's interesting. We both liked Iowa State, Kansas. was bad, was good for 3 weeks, and then was bad again. Both SMU. That was a good call by us from SMU. I did like Florida State. They burned me. That's great. Remember, I picked against Florida State last year, then they picked it this year, and then they burned me basically twice on the back to back of that. But no, I think overall pretty good. You nailed the SEC. I picked half of the SEC, and then Brendan Moore picked the other half. So him and me combined picked thing. But again, I had Tennessee beaten Georgia, they would have been there too, right? And
Yeah.
Ole Miss was almost competitive too. Again, we picked teams that were good value on this, right? It's not always just okay, did you pick the chalky pick, right? It's did you like when we say Oregon versus USC, right? We didn't pick Ohio State because again, you don't always want to go with chalk. You want to go with value picks, and a lot of value picks here came through, and we have proof of that. We have the receipts. We have the SMU tickets this. We have the SMU future this week. We have the Iowa State future this week. You have a UNLV future for this week. So like we have those future tickets. This is the week where you get to reap what you sow, and we had a pretty good sowing season, I would say, in back in August.
Yeah, well said. And I will remind that I did make a specific plea on behalf of Jacksonville State around week 7 or 8, if I remember correctly, where I pulled up the graphic and I said, this is by far the team to bet in this conference because I think they were second choice behind Western Kentucky. And had you done that, I think you would be in a little better shape getting plus 230 than you are right now at about probably about minus 130 right now. So the other thing I've learned just is, if you get enough of a price, I think just getting a longer shot team to the title game is enough where you can just hedge out of it. It's tough if they're going to be a big dog in the conference title game. But I think the fact that there are so few teams, or the only conference in divisions is the Sun Belt now, I think that's probably one of the reasons why we don't have a team that's even a touchdown favorite this weekend, which is crazy. But I think that the lack of divisions, as much as it creates the Chernobyl episode that I had dreaded, it does make for smaller lines in these conference title games. So I guess the thing is, if you takeaway is, if you like some team at long odds, I wouldn't look to say, is this a team that can really win the title game? I think I would just say, can they make the title game?
And that is a good point on that too, right? I think there are no massive favorites this week. The biggest is just 6 with Army and Tulane, right? Tulane -6, and I think
Yeah.
that's approaching a number where you bet Army. I feel like that's going to keep going. If that touches a 7, I'm all over Army on that. I will say that I mean, it's funny. We talked about the downside of the game rated divisions is that it's creates chaos with because now that basically who gets to the championship game is functionally random in some of these conferences. It's created that many problems, but it fixed. We now have competitive conference championship games. Yay!
Yeah, it's less random than just, okay, this team is geographically bound or geographically lucky, so they can
Yeah,
be the sacrificial lamb to the Big Ten East team
yeah.
because somebody between Iowa and Minnesota, Wisconsin has to go to get their face punched in yet again. Yep, it's not perfect, but as whoever said it, I don't know, you're more educated than I, and you've read literature better than I. Was it Voltaire who said, never let perfect be the enemy of good? Is that it?
I was it Voltaire? I thought it was like Bill Clinton or like James
Oh,
Carville.
no, it was Ryan Day. That's who said it. I'm sorry. Robert. And with that, thank you so much. Thank you, college football. Looking forward to another awesome weekend that begins with an early happy hour here on the West Coast. Clearly, no island time this week. Robert, I will see you a week from now when we talk about this, and we will have Duck on with our playoff preview. Until then, I will bid you adieu, and good luck to everybody that's watching and listening. And I will see you then, Robert.
Yep. Good luck, everybody.